Many thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring this week's video. Knowing what I know now, I can say that good or perfect vision is something that I always taken for granted. So I'm on the way to the eye doctor recently, which was my first appointment in over 15 years, but I've always had solid 20/20 vision and never any concerns to be addressed. But over the past couple years, the rate of decline in my nearsightedness has been a bit alarming. Even went out and purchased my first set of readers and decided to make an appointment to get things checked out. And upon my departure from said eye doctor appointment, my fears were confirmed that I no longer had the 20/20 vision I had grown accustomed to. And with my recent decline in vision, photography became a bit of a challenge since, well, the camera is often pretty close to my face, which had me completely rethinking how I use my camera in the first place. I've been predominantly a live view shooter for years. And in this video, I want to share with you the pros and cons of using the viewfinder versus live view, in case there's anyone out there that might be in a similar position as I am, or if you're just wondering which method is better than the other. And for the purposes of this discussion, I'll be sharing my experience using an electronic viewfinder in comparison to live view for landscape photography only. And before I completely forget, for I guess now the 5th week in a row, I want to mention that most of my 2024 workshop dates and details are now up on my website, which was a huge undertaking. I sent this info in my recent newsletter, but want to mention it here as well that I'll be running a workshop to Antarctica with KORDAN next March, which will be an experience of a lifetime that I'm really looking forward to. And I'll add a link to all of this information below the like button if you want to check that out. So to jump right into it, as far as the pros and cons are concerned, live view versus viewfinder, which is the best route to go? So as far as live view is concerned, and if you're not familiar with what I mean by live view is basically what you see on your LCD in live view. Some people call it LCD, some people call it live view, but it basically means the screen on the back of your camera. So as far as some of the positives, some of the positives that I've noticed at least is that when you use the live view, you don't have the camera directly up to your face. You kind of have it a little bit further back, which ultimately gives you better situational awareness of your surroundings. So since you don't have your eye in the actual kind of like cup holder, if you will, you have better awareness of what's going on around your surroundings, which situational awareness is always a good thing. You can also easily see the entire image. So when you're reviewing a photograph on the back of your live view, you can easily see all of the edges, all the detail around the edges of your scene, which I think is huge, or not huge, I think it's a huge benefit, because what I like to do is zoom in and kind of walk my eye around the edges of a frame. I do that kind of just to ensure that there's not kind of random things sticking into my frame that I might not have noticed when I was framing up my photographs. So I like to zoom in on an image that I captured and look along the edges of that scene just to make sure that everything was captured cleanly. Now, one of the biggest benefits, in my opinion, of using live view is the fact that I shouldn't say that every camera has this, but I think most modern cameras do today have tap to focus, where you can actually just tap on the LCD where you want your camera to focus, which is huge, mainly because you don't have to worry about manually moving a focus point to various areas of your scene. You can simply just tap on every single area of your photograph that you want to focus. And that's a really good, or I should say a really big time saver. Now, the other biggest benefit, in my opinion, again, of using live view is the fact that it's great for those unusual positions. So I like to photograph much lower to the ground. And if you're pretty low to the ground, trying to get your eye in the viewfinder is a little bit difficult. And adversely, if you have your camera up really, really high, maybe you're angling down, it's also really hard to get your eye all the way up to the viewfinder unless you have like a ladder or something like that. So most LCDs have this function where it can kind of tip out like this, or maybe kind of go like that, or all kinds of various different positions, which really makes it easy for those unusual shooting positions that you might find yourself in. And another big benefit is being able to review your photographs and being able to zoom in for image sharpness. So just being able to easily zoom in on a specific area of your scene and just make sure that everything is in sharp focus. It's something that I do fairly often. And from my experience, those are really the biggest benefits that impact my workflow for landscape photography. Now, if you're a wedding photographer, or maybe a sports photographer, or wildlife, maybe your list of pros and cons might be a little bit different. But from my experience shooting predominantly landscapes, those are the big positives for using live view. Now, positives for using a viewfinder, and this is really interesting. Using a viewfinder, of course, is much better for brighter environments. So I'm sure you've been in those scenarios where you're kind of looking at the back of your LCD on a bright sunny day and there's a lot of glare across it, and sometimes it's more difficult to see. But if you put your eye all the way in the viewfinder, it completely blocks out everything, and all you see is what your camera is seeing, or all you see is maybe the photograph that you just captured. But ultimately, it's a much darker viewing experience as opposed to looking at your live view on the back of your camera. Now, this is the biggest benefit, in my opinion, and one of the reasons why I'm starting to use a viewfinder more than live view is the fact that with a viewfinder, it has a diopter. And what's so funny is so many people aren't aware of exactly what the diopter is. It's this little dial here that is seemingly hidden on most cameras, but it's somewhere right around your viewfinder. And it ultimately gives you the ability to dial in the viewfinder's, optics based off of your eyesight. So if you have perfect 20/20 vision, you probably won't have to adjust the diopter right out of the box. But if you're like me, or like many people whose eyes are, a little bit compromised, if you will, you can rotate this diopter until what you see in the viewfinder becomes crystal clear for your eyes, which is absolutely amazing. It's like being able to adjust your diopter, or I'm saying it's like being able to adjust the viewfinder for your glasses almost, which is super, super beneficial. And it's something that I've really, really enjoyed, and something that I've never used until the last couple of years. So that's a huge, huge benefit of using the viewfinder. I wish that whatever you dialed in the diopter for the viewfinder, it would also translate to live view. That would be absolutely fantastic. And if a camera manufacturer can do that, and maybe they've already done it and I just don't know about it, that's a huge win. I think that using a viewfinder is better at refining compositions as well, as opposed to the live view. There's something about when you have the camera up to your face, it's just easier to really make those kind of small granular changes to your overall composition. I feel that when I'm trying to make smaller changes and I'm using live view, that I end up moving my camera more than perhaps I need to make the changes that I want to refine a composition. But if I have my camera in the viewfinder, I feel that I'm able to make those changes a little bit easier, those small, minute kind of perfection type of changes to the photograph. Now, using a viewfinder is also more of an immersive experience than using the live view. When you're inside of the viewfinder, you kind of lose track of, you lose the situational awareness, if you will. But you're able to kind of really get engrossed in what you're doing, because all you see is what your camera is seeing. All you see is maybe the settings that you have dialed in. It's just a very immersive photographic experience. And it's pretty cool sometimes to kind of really get into the moment, really get into the zone of what you're doing. It also provides better stability. And this is a big thing. If you're using specifically longer focal lengths, maybe you're shooting around sunrise or sunset where there's not a ton of ambient light, lower light scenarios, when you have the camera to your face, you automatically create more stability because your camera is pressed against your nose or pressed against your face, which keeps it more stable. Versus when we're just looking at the back of your LCD and you're just using your hands because you don't have that third point of contact, which is your face, to rest your camera to. So more stability whenever you're using whenever you're using a viewfinder is definitely another positive as well. And it's something that I have been doing recently now that I have my viewfinder, the diopter adjusted for my new vision over the past couple of years, is I no longer review image sharpness really on the back of my LCD. I like to do that through the viewfinder. I feel like since the fact that I can adjust my viewfinder for my eyes, that is a better scenario for me to be able to, check and see if a photograph is sharp in certain areas of my scene. So I now use the viewfinder for that as well. Now, as far as the negatives are concerned, when you use live view, it's easier to overexpose a photograph if you do not use a histogram, because a lot of times people don't really adjust the LCD's brightness. But I don't want to say every camera, but most cameras out there do give you the ability to adjust the LCD brightness, the live view brightness. And if you have the brightness up too much, which in my experience, when you get a brand new camera right out of the box, the live view brightness is a little bit brighter than normal. And if you're not using a histogram, it's pretty easy to overexpose a photograph. So you really want to be careful just using what you see on the back of your LCD as the tried and true, I should say, method of your exposure. So that's something you really want to be aware of. Live view, as we mentioned before, a negative, it doesn't give you as much stability because you only have 2 points of contact. You know, if you're holding it with 2 hands, you have your left hand, you have your right hand, that's it. When you put it to your face, that's your 3rd point of contact. So a little bit less stability if you're hand holding your photograph and you're using live view. It can also be difficult to see your LCD or your live view on bright days. Mentioned this at the beginning of the video. LCDs are prone to reflection or glare. So a lot of times if it's a brighter day or brighter scenario, you know, the sun has risen or the sun is about to set, you can easily get some distracting glare on the back of your LCD versus if you're looking into the viewfinder. So live view sometimes can be a little bit difficult to see in brighter scenarios. And then the biggest one is the fact that the live view cannot be adjusted for your eyesight. And like I mentioned earlier as well, if there was a diopter for, or whatever you dialed in for your viewfinder match the live view, that would be absolutely fantastic. But the fact that you just cannot adjust the viewfinder based on your eyesight is definitely something that I find is a little bit of a negative. Now, as far as the viewfinder's negatives concerned, I don't think that either of these scenarios are perfect scenarios, viewfinder or live view. It really just depends on your particular scenario, depends on your eyesight, and depends what you're photographing as well. But as far as the viewfinder's negatives are concerned, sometimes it's difficult, excuse me, to see all of the edges, or I should say the extreme edges of your scene. So whenever you're trying to refine a composition and you're looking through the viewfinder, sometimes it is difficult to see. And from my experience, it's like the upper left-hand corner, upper right-hand corner, the bottom left-hand corner, and the bottom right-hand corner. Sometimes it's hard to really see a lot of those details in there. I think it's sometimes easier to see that kind of detail on the back of the live view. So sometimes it's difficult to do that. It can be uncomfortable on a tripod. So if you have your camera up a little bit higher and you have to maybe stand on your tippy toes to get your eye to the viewfinder, that's obviously not a super comfortable position. Or if you're like me and you have your camera very low to the ground, obviously laying down on your stomach and getting your eye all the way positioned to go into the viewfinder, that can be a little bit uncomfortable as well. So depending on the tripod arrangement that you happen to be using for a particular image, the viewfinder can sometimes be a little bit of a difficult situation to use, I should say. Now, a big one is the fact that there is no touch to focus on the viewfinder. Obviously, you're going to have to manually move the focus point inside of your viewfinder by using some type of joystick or some type of directional arrow pad on your camera to move that focus point to wherever you want in your viewfinder. So not having tap to focus is a little bit of a drawback, I would say. Canon does have something really, really cool out there that I did get to try at a conference, I guess last year, where when you're looking through the viewfinder, it can track where your eye is moving in the scene and it'll actually place the focus point there. It was pretty freaky with how well it worked. If that technology comes to all cameras, I think that'd be pretty cool, because then that would definitely remove one of the negatives of using a viewfinder, because you could just look wherever you want in the scene and it'll automatically focus, which would be super, super cool. So having to manually move your focus point, I think, is definitely a negative. It takes a little bit of additional time. And like I mentioned before, it can be a little bit, it's a little difficult to use that viewfinder in uncomfortable positions, or unusual positions is what I should say. So those are really the pros and the cons of using a viewfinder versus a live view. Like I said, prior to the decline in my eyesight, I was predominantly a live view shooter. But I think as people's eyes kind of digress a little bit, it's obviously a very natural thing. I have gravitated more towards using the viewfinder. So I'm not 100% a viewfinder shooter. I used to be maybe I don't know, 75% live view. Now I'm probably 75% the viewfinder. And it's just kind of a shift in my my overall workflow. But once again, it's all really based off of my declining eyesight. So I have found that information was interesting as to what I have done to, I should say, adapt to my vision. So I figured that there's got to be more people out there in a similar scenario as I am, and I thought this information might be helpful. Before I do wrap up this week's video, however, I just want to say a huge thanks to the longtime sponsor of the channel, which is Squarespace, who I use for all of my website and e-commerce needs. Squarespace provides a robust and beautiful online platform to develop your website. You can showcase your photography using Squarespace's professional portfolio designs and display your work using customizable galleries in order to make it your own. And with Squarespace's online store feature, you'll have access to all the tools you'll need to start selling your physical, digital, or service products online immediately. You can even use Squarespace's new asset library so you can upload, organize, and access all your content from a single place in order to easily find and use them across the entire Squarespace platform. So if you're looking to start a new website or possibly upgrade your current website, check out squarespace.com/Mark Denney for a free trial and 10% off your first purchase. So I really do hope you enjoyed this week's video and you're able to get at least one helpful piece of information that you could possibly apply to the way that you are using your camera next time you're in the field or on location. If you have any questions about anything covered in the video, please leave me a comment and I'll be sure to get back in touch with you as soon as I possibly can. And if you have any questions about either the Antarctica workshop or any of the other workshops that I'm going to be running in 2024, please either email me or message me on my website or leave a comment here and I'll do my best to get back in touch with you. If you enjoyed this week's video, if you could give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed already. And as always, I really do appreciate you checking out this week's video and I will see you all next Wednesday. Bye.